There are moments when a woman looks at you with a softness that feels almost impossible to misunderstand. And then, just as you're about to believe it means something, she pulls away. Not dramatically, not with anger, just enough to leave you wondering if you imagined the whole thing. That kind of confusion stays with a man longer than rejection ever does, because rejection gives you an answer. Mixed signals leave you talking to yourself. Before we go any further, if these conversations help you understand people, and maybe even yourself a little better, take a second to subscribe. There are some things about relationships that aren't obvious until someone quietly points them out. Now, people often assume that when someone hesitates because of an age gap, it means the feelings aren't real. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes the feelings are exactly what scare them. Those are two very different situations. Imagine this. She's laughing with you without trying. The conversation keeps going long after it should have ended. She remembers little details you forgot telling her. Your favorite coffee, the story about your grandfather, that one song you said reminded you of childhood. Nobody remembers those things by accident. But then, someone walks into the room. She suddenly becomes careful. Her voice changes just a little. She creates distance that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. You notice it immediately. Most men do. What they don't notice is what may be happening inside her, because attraction doesn't exist in isolation. It arrives carrying questions. Questions about family, friends, future, judgment. Questions she never expected to ask herself. Sometimes the age difference isn't sitting between the two of you. It's sitting inside her own mind. That's a much harder thing to overcome. I've spoken to women over the years who describe this feeling in almost the same way. Not because they didn't enjoy being around someone older or younger, but because enjoying it made everything more complicated. They'd catch themselves smiling after reading one message, then immediately think, "What am I doing?" Not because the conversation felt wrong, because it felt right. And right can be frightening when it doesn't fit the picture you've always imagined for your life. That's the strange part about emotional connection. It doesn't ask for permission first. It simply appears, quietly. You don't schedule it, you don't vote on it. One day someone becomes the person you're waiting to hear from. You don't even remember when it happened. Now think about yourself. Maybe you've already lived this. She looked genuinely happy to see you. There were long conversations, small touches, comfortable silence, even teasing. Then suddenly, she became distant. No explanation, no argument, just distance. Your mind probably searched for mistakes. Maybe I texted too much. Maybe I seemed too interested. Maybe I should have said something different. Men are remarkably good at blaming themselves when they don't have enough information. But uncertainty has a way of inventing stories that aren't necessarily true. Sometimes her distance has very little to do with losing interest. Sometimes she's trying to measure the weight of what she's beginning to feel. And people don't always do that gracefully. Some disappear for a while. Some become strangely formal. Some convince themselves they're being logical. But emotions rarely disappear just because someone decides they're inconvenient. That's why you'll sometimes see something confusing. She creates space, yet somehow keeps finding reasons to stay connected. A random message, a question she could have asked anyone else, a reaction to something you posted. Nothing obvious, nothing that would expose too much, just enough to keep the thread alive. Most men stop paying attention right there. They either chase harder or walk away convinced it was all fake. But there's something almost nobody notices. The real battle often isn't happening between the two of you. It's happening inside the person who's trying to decide whether the comfort she feels with you is worth facing everything that comfort might change. And once that quiet battle begins, the signs become much harder to read than anyone expects. There's a small moment that almost nobody pays attention to. It happens after the laughter, after the easy conversations, after she starts feeling safe enough to let her guard slip. That's when she goes home. And suddenly, everything gets louder. Not outside, inside. Because being with you and thinking about you are two completely different experiences. When she's with you, she responds to what she feels. When she's alone, she starts negotiating with herself. People will notice. What if this doesn't work? What will my family think? Am I making this harder than it needs to be? Sometimes those thoughts aren't even her own. They're borrowed from parents, friends, past relationships, comments she heard years ago that she never realized stayed with her. That's why someone can leave a wonderful evening and wake up the next morning acting completely different. Nothing changed between the two of you. Something changed inside her. I've seen men interpret that shift as proof she was pretending. In many cases, it isn't pretending, it's conflict. And conflict has strange ways of showing itself. She might reply more slowly, not because she's trying to play games, because every message suddenly feels heavier. She reads your text once, then again. She types, deletes it, types another answer, deletes that too. Not because she doesn't care, sometimes because she cares enough to wonder what every sentence means. You probably know that feeling yourself. When someone matters, even simple words don't feel simple anymore. Good morning. I made it home. Hope your meeting goes well. They're ordinary messages, until they come from someone you can't stop thinking about. Then every word seems to carry another question underneath it. Now imagine she's already worried about the age difference. Those tiny conversations become emotional puzzles. Should I sound interested? Should I slow down? Am I getting attached too quickly? Would this even make sense 6 months from now? Notice something. None of those questions are about attraction. They're about consequences. That's an important difference, because attraction asks, how do I feel? Fear asks, what happens if I trust this feeling? Those are completely different conversations happening in the same heart, and they often pull in opposite directions. You might notice something else. She becomes unusually curious about your life, not in a dramatic way. She asks little questions. What does your weekend usually look like? How do your friends spend time? What kind of future do you picture? She isn't interviewing you. She's quietly trying to imagine herself inside your world. Sometimes she doesn't even realize she's doing it. She's collecting pieces, seeing if they fit together. Not because she's planning a wedding in her head, because she's trying to answer a much smaller question. Would I feel at home here? People rarely fall for someone's appearance alone. They begin imagining emotional safety. And that's where things become surprisingly vulnerable. Because if she starts imagining a future, she also starts imagining losing it. That's why people sometimes pull away exactly when things are going well. It sounds backwards. But emotional closeness often wakes up old fears. Not only fear of judgment, fear of disappointment, fear of choosing wrong, fear of hoping too much. Maybe you've noticed this. She'll tell you something unexpectedly personal, a story she doesn't usually share, something about childhood, an old relationship, a dream she quietly gave up. For a few minutes, it feels like she's letting you into a room almost nobody sees. Then the next day, she acts like the door was never opened, cooler, more reserved, almost embarrassed. That doesn't automatically mean she's changed her mind. Sometimes vulnerability creates its own kind of panic. People reveal themselves, then wonder if they've revealed too much. It happens more often than most people admit, especially when someone unexpectedly becomes important. And this is where many men make the mistake that changes everything. Not because they're careless, because they're impatient. They see her hesitation and try to erase it as quickly as possible. More texts, more reassurance, more pressure to define the relationship. It usually comes from a good place, but uncertainty rarely disappears because someone demands certainty. In fact, sometimes it grows, because now she isn't only trying to understand her own feelings, she's trying to manage yours too. That's exhausting. But there is another response, a quieter one that creates something far more powerful than convincing words ever could. And strangely enough, it's usually the response she never expects. The response she rarely expects is your calm. Not silence meant to punish her, not pretending you don't care, not disappearing to make her chase you. Something much quieter than that. A kind of confidence that doesn't rush to solve every uncomfortable moment. That sounds simple. It almost never feels simple, because when someone matters to you, waiting can feel like standing in a room where every clock suddenly gets louder. You check your phone. Nothing. You tell yourself you'll stop thinking about it. 5 minutes later, you're checking again. It's not weakness. It's attachment. When we begin caring about someone, uncertainty has a way of filling in the blanks with stories. She's losing interest. I said too much. Maybe there was someone else all along. Your mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. It wants an answer, any answer. Even a painful one can feel easier than not knowing. But here's something I've noticed after watching countless relationships begin. The people who create the deepest sense of safety are often the ones who don't panic when emotions become complicated. Think about a quiet evening together. You're walking side by side, not saying much. There's no need to impress each other anymore. No performance, just presence. She glances at you for a second, looks away, smiles to herself. It's such a small moment that most people would miss it. But moments like that matter, because attraction isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply the feeling that your nervous system can finally rest around someone. That kind of comfort is rare, and rare things often make people cautious, especially if they've been hurt before, not because they're broken, because experience changes how carefully people hold their hearts. Some women become more open after disappointment. Others become slower, more observant. They stop asking, "Do I like him?" and begin asking, "Can I trust how I feel with him?" Those are different questions. One is about chemistry. The other is about emotional safety. Now imagine she's sitting with friends. Someone casually asks, "So, what's going on with you two?" She laughs, shrugs, "Oh, nothing." But later that night, she replays the question. Not because her friends know the answer, because she doesn't, and that's uncomfortable. Sometimes we assume clarity arrives all at once. It usually doesn't. More often, it arrives in tiny moments. She notices she smiles when your name appears. She catches herself wondering how your day went. She hears a joke and instinctively thinks, "He'd laugh at this." Little things, almost invisible, until they start happening every day. That's when the emotional conflict becomes harder to ignore, because now she isn't deciding whether she likes you. She's deciding what to do about liking you, and those are worlds apart. This is where many men accidentally turn uncertainty into distance. Not because they mean to, because they become detectives. Every reply gets analyzed, every emoji, every pause, every sentence. She used 3 words yesterday. Today, she only wrote 1. What does that mean? The strange thing is, people can feel when they're being analyzed, even if you never mention it. Conversations stop feeling natural. Instead of enjoying each other, both people begin managing expectations. That quiet ease between you slowly disappears. Not overnight, just little by little. But there's another kind of man. You've probably met one. Maybe you've wished you were him. He notices the uncertainty too. He's not blind. He's simply not controlled by it. He understands something that takes many people years to learn. Feelings often grow best in places where they don't feel forced. That doesn't mean accepting confusing behavior forever. Healthy boundaries still matter. Self-respect still matters. But patience and self-respect can exist together. In fact, they're often strongest when they do, because confidence isn't always speaking. Sometimes confidence is allowing another person the space to discover what they're already beginning to feel, without trying to pull the answer out of them before they're ready. And oddly enough, that quiet space is often where something unexpected begins to happen. She stops wondering whether the age gap is the biggest thing about you. She starts wondering why being away from you suddenly feels heavier than she expected. That's a strange turning point, not because everything suddenly becomes easy. It usually doesn't. The age gap is still there. Other people's opinions haven't disappeared. The questions about the future haven't magically solved themselves. But something inside her begins to shift, without anyone announcing it, without some dramatic conversation. She starts noticing your absence in places where she never expected to. Maybe she's standing in line for coffee. The person in front of her says something that reminds her of one of your stories. She smiles before she even realizes why. Or she's driving home after work. A song comes on, not because it was your song, just because you once laughed halfway through it and completely ruined the serious mood. Now, every time she hears it, she remembers that laugh. That's how emotional attachment often grows. Not through grand gestures, through ordinary moments that quietly become connected to one person. People rarely notice when it starts. They only notice when it's already happening, and that can be unsettling because attachment doesn't ask whether the timing is convenient. It doesn't pause because life is complicated. It simply becomes part of your everyday thinking. That's why someone who has been trying very hard to stay logical can suddenly find herself doing something that surprises even her. She reaches for her phone, not because she has something important to say, just because she wants to tell you about something completely ordinary, a dog she saw on her walk, a funny mistake at work, a movie she thinks you'd enjoy. The message itself isn't important. The instinct is, you're becoming part of the way she experiences her day. That happens long before many people are willing to admit how much someone matters. And here's something men often misunderstand. When those little messages begin, it's usually not because she's trying to impress you. It's because she feels comfortable bringing you into the smallest corners of her life. That's a different kind of closeness. Anyone can share exciting news. Very few people share the boring parts of their day. Those moments are oddly intimate because they say, "I thought of you," without actually saying those words. But comfort has an interesting side effect. The more real something feels, the more real the risks feel too. So don't be surprised if she suddenly has another moment where she seems distant. It confuses almost everyone. Things feel warm, easy, natural. Then she pulls back again, not forever, just enough to catch her breath. Imagine standing at the edge of cold water. You step in, it feels uncomfortable. You step back, then you try again. Each time you go a little farther. Emotional closeness often works that way, especially when someone is facing questions they've never had to answer before. This doesn't mean every mixed signal should be accepted. It doesn't mean every relationship is secretly meant to work. Sometimes people simply aren't compatible. Sometimes the timing really is wrong. Those possibilities deserve honesty too. But when there is genuine connection, progress is rarely perfectly straight. There are pauses, moments of courage, moments of doubt, tiny steps forward, tiny steps back. Then something almost invisible happens. She stops imagining what other people might think and starts paying attention to how she feels when she's actually with you. That comparison changes everything because opinions are loud, experience is quiet, and over time, quiet experiences have a way of becoming more convincing than loud opinions. She begins asking herself different questions, not, "What will people say?" but, "Why do I feel calmer around him?" Not, "What if this doesn't make sense?" but, "Why does pretending I don't care feel so exhausting?" Those are difficult questions to ignore because they're personal. Nobody else can answer them for her. And once someone begins asking those questions honestly, they're often much closer to a decision than they appear. But there is one final fear that keeps many people standing still. A fear so subtle that even they may not recognize it at first. And until you understand that fear, some of her choices will continue to seem almost impossible to explain. That final fear isn't always the age gap. It isn't always family, or friends, or the opinions of strangers. Sometimes, the deepest fear is much quieter. What if I let myself love this, and it still doesn't last? People don't only protect themselves from bad relationships, they also protect themselves from good ones that feel too important to lose. It sounds strange until you've lived it, because when someone doesn't matter much, disappointment hurts. But life keeps moving. When someone begins to matter deeply, the possibility of losing them suddenly feels much heavier. That's why you'll sometimes notice something almost invisible. She isn't pulling away because she feels nothing. She's pulling away because she's trying to figure out whether she can survive caring this much. Think about the last time someone truly mattered to you. Not someone you liked, someone who quietly became part of your emotional world. Did you suddenly become fearless? Probably not. You became more careful. You noticed more. You worried more. Not because your feelings disappeared, because they grew. That happens more often than people admit. And when there's an age gap, those emotions can become even more layered. She may wonder whether you're imagining the future the same way she is, whether you'll still choose each other when life becomes ordinary, whether the connection you feel today can survive the years that follow. Those aren't signs of weakness. They're questions many people ask when something begins to feel real, not just exciting, real. And real relationships are built in very ordinary moments. The excitement fades in and out. Life becomes routine. Someone gets sick. Someone has a difficult week. Plans change. Money gets tight. Families disagree. That's when attraction alone isn't enough. Emotional safety becomes everything. So if she finds herself feeling calmer after talking to you, if she notices that your presence lowers her stress instead of increasing it, if she begins trusting that she doesn't have to perform to keep your attention, something meaningful is often happening beneath the surface. Not guaranteed, not certain, but meaningful. Because one of the rarest feelings another human being can give us is this: I don't have to become someone else to be accepted here. That feeling stays with people, long after clever words are forgotten, long after perfect dates fade from memory. And here's something I wish more men understood. Trying to convince someone to stay rarely creates love. Giving them a reason to feel emotionally safe often does. There's a difference. One is pressure, the other is peace. Peace doesn't mean pretending you're unaffected. It doesn't mean waiting forever while someone remains uncertain. Healthy love still needs honesty. It still needs effort from both people. It still needs two adults choosing each other. But confidence has a quiet quality that many people overlook. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase every moment of distance with panic. It doesn't confuse patience with losing yourself. It simply says, without saying a word, I'm here honestly. I'm not here desperately. And strangely, that's the kind of presence people remember, because it allows them to make a choice instead of reacting to pressure. If she's meant to walk closer, she'll do it because the connection feels safe, not because she was cornered by fear of losing you. And if she doesn't, you'll still have something many men spend years searching for. The confidence to know your value isn't measured by one person's decision. Ironically, that's often the moment when relationships become healthier, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped believing that your worth depends on being chosen. Sometimes the age gap is the loudest thing in the room, until two people quietly discover that respect, emotional maturity, kindness, and genuine understanding speak much louder. And when that happens, the question is no longer whether the years between you are too many. The question becomes whether either of you is brave enough to stop counting them and start paying attention to everything that was quietly growing in the silence between you.